I'll tell you one thing that this has kind of, taught me, and I know it's not the situation any of us obviously have wanted. I'm up early really now every day. I'm going for like at least a 2-mile run every day. I'm eating better. I'm drinking like 6 bottles of water, and I feel great. And it's like I finally got this consistency where I never had any of that before. And I don't know if I was
now stay with it.
come to it. Right.
Stick with it.
How about you? What are you doing now still? Are you getting up early? Are you still running?
Yeah, so I normally was getting up at 4:15, 4:30. Now I get up at 5 instead. I get an extra half hour, but I don't go like the guy who trains me. He trains me on FaceTime. So I have a gym in my house. So he puts me through my workout, grab my coffee, shower in the car downtown. I do radio till like 12:20, jump in the car, come home, and then just start taping TV stuff every day. It's great.
That's great. That's awesome. Hey, so what's going on with the radio show now with all this? What are you guys talking about? How's that going?
I mean, it's a great challenge, but like, Major League Baseball has these discussions with the players. So we're doing that. The Last Dance is just a ton of great content. NFL draft, free agency, Bulls hired a new GM and head of basketball operations. So we've had stuff to talk about.
I was totally going to ask you about The Last Dance. I've been watching it. It's awesome. I mean, you're out there in Chicago.
Right.
Give me your take with it, your connection to it. I mean, were you there obviously during the entire run? I mean, give me all your.
Are you rolling now or no?
Yeah, we're rolling.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I was an NBA scout in the late 80s and early 90s. I worked actually for a year for the late Jerry Krause. So a lot of this is not breaking new ground. There are some things I learned that I never knew. Even being around it as much as I was, I had no idea that Jerry had said to Phil Jackson, you go 82-0 and you're not coming back. That one stunned me because the day that Phil agreed to his last contract with the Bulls, 1 year, $6 million, I sent a message to Jerry Krause. And it's different. You didn't have texting and iPhones and all that. And I leave a message and he calls back, and I'm sitting at WGN Radio where I used to work, and I answer the phone, WGN Sports, and he goes, David, Jerry Krause. I said, hey, what's up? I got a message to call you. I said, I was hoping to interview you. He said, can you tape it right now? Yes. Start the machine. I said, okay, Jerry Krause coming out 3, 2, 1. Jerry, it's a great day for the organization. The winningest coach in the NBA is a Bull again. He said, you're right, it is a great day. This is the last year that he'll be our coach. And I'm thinking, wow, like you are doing nothing but winning and cashing big checks, and you can't wait to get this guy out of here. And did that interview, and I have it somewhere, but it's just stunning the divisiveness that set in, because if I take you back to the late 1980s, Stan Albeck is the coach, and they replaced Stan Albeck with Doug Collins. Well, I'm at a local health club called the Deerfield Multiplex, which is still a local public health club. That's where the Bulls practiced. Teams didn't have their own practice facilities like they do now. And so a bunch of the media, me included, are all sitting out there, and in walks a guy in a Panama Jack straw hat, an untucked, faded, kind of worn-out polo shirt, and long, faded jeans that are frayed at the bottom with flip-flops. And we're looking at him. He's 6'8". We're like, who's that guy? And it's Phil Jackson. And he's coming in to interview to be Stan Albeck's assistant. And Jerry Krause comes out. We're all sitting there and goes, this is how you dress for a job interview? And they didn't hire him. And he went back to the CBA. 2 years later, they bring him back in to interview to be Doug's top assistant. And Jerry Krause tells him how he better dress. He shows up in a beautiful suit with his tie tied, and he gets hired. And then when he got hired as the head coach and they fired Doug, Michael was furious. I don't want to play for Phil Jackson. I want to play for Doug Collins. And if you remember, when Michael left the Bulls and came back with the Wizards, who did he hire as his head coach? He hired Doug Collins. So he was not all in on Phil Jackson. And then Phil gets them to take the next step. They win 6 titles, and Michael and he were tied at the hip.
That's an unbelievable story. Like, you can't get that anywhere. That's why I knew you would have a lot of stuff to talk about with this thing. And this whole documentary, I love it because you could actually nobody has to like pretend to say something they don't want to say. I mean, I like having all the off the cuff, the behind the scenes swearing, whatever. I mean, that's how they feel. I mean, I think it's great, right? I mean, I don't think we've seen a lot of stuff like this, right?
Yeah, it's the best I've ever seen, and I watch all the 30 for 30s. I watch a lot of this, and as I said, some of it I lived, some of it I'm learning. But I'll tell you a great story. So it's like 89, 90, I get hired by a trading card company. They're doing draft pick trading card sets. No one had ever done them. They call me and say, hey, you've been scouting. Would you be willing to write the backs of the cards? And we want the set to come out the day of the draft. So you got to prognosticate who's going to be in that draft. So it's not like I can wait till the draft is over and then go, all right, let's do those guys. They don't need us then. The players were each getting $5,000. And we were paying them in March. As soon as they got eliminated from the NCAA tournament, I would show up on campuses. I'd call agents. Here's $5,000. Sign with us. And everybody got the same money except the number one pick got $10,000. So I become friends with all of these agents. I know all these players. I remember giving Latrell Sprewell a $5,000 check in Orlando at the Orlando Classic All-Star Tournament, and you'd have thought I gave him $1 billion. Yeah, these guys were I could get anything I needed. So to make a long story short, let's move to 1994. Big Dog Robinson's the number one pick in the draft. One of those agents, a guy named Charles Tucker. Charles Tucker is representing Jalen Rose, Juwan Howard, who went to my basketball camps, and Big Dog. Dr. Tucker calls me and says, the draft's in Indy. Can you get a camera? Come down to Indy. You've been really good to my guys. I will let you interview the three of them at 11 a.m. the day of the draft. You'll have an exclusive sit-down with all of them. Okay, done. Cameraman, guy by the name of Jeff Corbett, who's still my cameraman today, 26 years later. He comes with me. We drive to Indy. We go to the Crown Plaza. The draft's going to be there. We go up to Dr. Tucker's suite. Jalen Rose is wearing that awful red and white striped suit that he wore back in the day that he laughs about now. I interview Big Dog, Juwan, and Jalen. We take pictures with them. We leave. We're going to drive the tapes back to Chicago because you didn't have the way to send the tape back the way now you shoot it, and on a DeGiro, you just feed it down the line. We didn't have that. There was no internet. So we get on the elevator. There's a guy in the back of the elevator, and I can tell he's looking at me. And I look at him, kind of nod. I look back again, and I go, can I help you? He's like, hey, is your name David Kaplan? I said, it is. He's like, I'm going to be seeing a lot more of you. I'm like, who are you? He said, I actually work for two agents. We represent Sean Kemp. He's our number one client, and you've done a bunch of card deals with some of our newer clients, and I just want to give you a tip. Sean just got traded to the Chicago Bulls 5 minutes ago. I'm like, excuse me? He said, Sean Kemp got traded to the Chicago Bulls 5 minutes ago. I'm driving to Chicago right now. I got to meet his plane. He's got to pass a physical before the draft tonight. He goes, I got 3 hours to get back, pick him at the airport, physical, and if he passes, the trade's done. I'm like, oh, my God. Well, there was sports radio, but there wasn't Twitter. Like, you couldn't instantly break a story. Plus, am I going on the air with a story of this magnitude with Scottie Pippen being the best player on the Bulls because Michael's retired off of some maniac in an elevator? No chance. So I call his bosses, who I'd been really good to giving them card deals, and I get the head guy on. And I said, hey, man, I got a tip on something. I don't tell them I got it from their own guy. I just tell them I'm at the draft. I just got a tip. Did Sean Kemp just get traded to the Bulls? He's like, don't quote us. Yes, it's a done deal. Sean Kemp, Ricky Pierce, and the 11th pick to the Bulls for Scottie Pippen. It's done. I'm like, oh, God. I call in back in Chicago on my radio station. I go, put me on right now. I got a huge story. I break the story. It goes everywhere. I mean, everywhere. I get a call from a radio station in Seattle, KJR. Now, that station aired the Sonics games, and the owner of the station, a guy named Barry Ackerley was the owner of the Sonics, who I used to scout for. I didn't know him. I get a call from them. Can you come on? We hear in this report, blah, blah, blah. So I go on. I say it. Unbeknownst to me now, their phone lines light up at the Sonics offices, and they have almost 1,000 people canceling season tickets because they're losing the Rain Man. The Rain Man was huge, Sean Kemp. Now the day goes on. It's all anyone in Chicago's talking about. We traded Scottie Pippen. I can't believe it. Bulls fans hate the trade. The Sonics fans are thrilled to not be getting Scottie. They had no idea what they were talking about. So now the draft starts. I'm watching the draft going, when is this trade going to get announced? I'm all over the news. And Bill Raftery, Doug Collins, a few of these guys who are the analysts are going, yeah, we're hearing this report from David Kaplan that this trade went down, but we haven't seen it yet. Bulls make their draft pick. They announce, they picked whoever it was, Dickie Simpkins or Jason Caffey. And I sitting there going, something's off here. Jerry Krause walks to the podium. I'm there. And somebody says, Jerry, did you make a trade with Scottie Pippen? He said, I don't know where David Kaplan came up with that story. We did not approach Seattle. That's what he said. We did not approach Seattle. Semantics. Maybe Seattle approached you. Anyway, to make a very long story short, the trade doesn't go through. I get barbecued. Everyone's killing me. Where'd you come up with such a stupid idea? Okay. I end up running into George Carl at Rick Majerus' funeral because Rick was one of my best friends. And I walk up to him. I said, George, I'm David Kaplan, good friend of Rick. I've interviewed you before. Can I ask you a question? Did you make a trade for Scottie Pippen back in 1994? He said, I did. He said, I made an amazing trade. He said, we absolutely crushed the Bulls on that trade. And Jerry Krause, he leaked it to some jackass in the Chicago media. He said, and if he doesn't leak it to him, no one here knows, and the trade goes on, and it's done. But because he leaked it, our owner freaked out because some people didn't want their tickets, and they didn't trust us to know we were making a good deal. I said, well, actually, that's not how it went down. He looks at me, he goes, how the hell would you know? I said, number one, I'm the jackass in the Chicago media, and number two, I didn't get it from Jerry Krause. He and I got sideways after I stopped working for him. I got it from Sean Kemp's agents. He's like, dude, if I had seen you, I would have literally punched you nearly to death. He said, you single-handedly, you don't break that story, that trade goes down. And I asked one of Michael's best friends today on the radio, Mark Vancil, who you've seen in the documentary, said, Mark, if I don't break that story and Scottie Pippen gets traded, does Michael come back? He said, I don't think he does.
This is gold, man, that you would have this. I've never heard anything like that. How are you not in the documentary talking about this?
I don't know, but that's 100% true story.
Yeah, that is awesome. Every time I catch up with you, I feel like I hear something like how you're connected to these. That is unreal. And what would happen today, right? I mean, you are the only person to have that because you're right. There's no Twitter. There's no Facebook. I mean, it was like, wow. I mean,
crazy story, man.
That is unreal. That is unreal. What a job they're doing with it. I mean, I'm loving watching it. I mean, I can't wait for the final couple episodes. But and for being in Chicago, I remember you and we were talking about the World Series with the Cubs and all that. I mean, can you even imagine all the stuff that you've kind of been through right now? And if you ever thought you were going to see that in your lifetime, and what an experience that year was.
2016, I hosted the pre and post. I did. Mm-hmm. Up till this last season was my last year. I retired from that. 25 straight seasons I did the Cubs pre and post. And in 2016, I said before the season, they're winning the World Series this year. And everyone looked at me like, dude, it's been 108 years. Are you out of your mind? I said, I'm just telling you, there's a different vibe. There's something going on here with Joe Madden and Theo and all this talent. And that November 2nd, 2016, by far, the greatest sports night of my life. And I've seen a lot of great things, but that was insane. And there's nothing in sports that I could ever cover that would top that.
I remember watching some behind the scenes of you there, like on the set, before they came to you and people were talking to you. You're like, shut up. Nobody talk to me. No, this is not yet.
And you should see the stuff they didn't use because of the profanity, where my partner, Todd Hollingsworth, who I love dearly, is one of my best friends. He played for us for a year and a half. He's awesome as an analyst. Now he's the voice of the Marlins. He's like, dude, relax. We got this. 6-3 in the 8th. And I said, listen to me here, mercenary. You took our money. We paid you to play. You didn't live and die with this team. You played for 8 teams in the big leagues. You played for whatever jersey, and I'm not denigrating you for it. I grew up a Cub fan. I will die a Cub fan. I was a vendor at that ballpark. No, you don't understand. They could be up 9,000 to nothing in the 9th inning with no one on and 2 outs, and the Chicago Cubs could find a way to screw this whole thing up. And, of course, they almost did, but we won.
Hey, man, you guys there with Chicago, I'm a huge Red Sox fan because I grew up in New England, and then to have that, and I think now we get a little spoiled, right? I mean, they've won, 4, since, and it's like, and with the Patriots, another Super Bowl, you're like, what is wrong with me? You know what I mean? They got thrilled, It's
kids that grow up in your area in New England, they have no idea what it means to be cheering for a team that hasn't won.
It's absolutely. And I have to tell everybody when I went to Foxborough when it was just a crappy stadium and they were losing all the time. And that's, nobody remembers those days. Hey, any last thoughts on what's coming up here down the line? Anything that you've been hearing, whether it's baseball or football and all that kind of stuff getting going and what you think it's going to look like, for a little while before we really get back to a normal situation?
Well, I really like the on-field baseball plan of universal DH, expanded rosters, play 10-inning, a 9-inning game. If we're tied, we play the 10th. The 11th inning, we start with a runner on second base. That may even get scaled back and start it right that way in the 10th inning. But either way, I don't know if we're going to play baseball unless we can get both sides to agree financially. I was told today Chicago Cubs are going to lose between $100 and $150 million with no fans in the stands. They make more. 70% of their in-season revenue is made on game day experiences, whether that's tickets, concessions, souvenirs, the hotel across the street, the bars and restaurants they built up and built there. They own most of it. It's like not Wrigleyville anymore. It's Rickettsville, basically. And without it, they may end up, not just the Cubs, a lot of teams may go, all right, get some of that money off the books. And they're going to start trading guys that you're thinking, wait a minute, you're getting rid of who? They can't pay their bills. And I'm not saying teams are going to go bankrupt, but teams are going to be in a tough spot.
Man, it's wild stuff, man. I know. And I think about football coming back. I mean, there's not going to be the fans there. I mean, even if we start to play, right? I mean, nobody wants 100,000 people in any one place. I don't even know if until probably the next season that's going to be a reality, right? I mean,
you may be broadcasting from a studio, not at the ballparks.
Yeah, well, we've done a few of those. That's not optimal, but we'll do what we can. But
what you got to do.
Yeah. Hey, man, awesome hearing all these great stories from you. I love catching up. It's been way too long. So all the best out there, man, to you and the family and everybody. So.
You too. Stay safe and healthy, man. I always love working with you.
Hey, thanks, Cap.